This is the All-Star Networking Show with your host, Kathy Paper.
Welcome to the All-Star Networking Show. Super excited to have Ian Colville here today, joining us for the listeners. And Ian, why don't you say hello and let everybody know what you're up to, and then we'll get started talking about all things networking.
All right, great, Kathy. Thanks for having me today. I'm Ian Colville. I run a real estate investment company by the name of Carpathian Capital Management. We're based in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, Minnesota area. We've got about 15 people on the team and about 100 investors that invest with us in various real estate projects that we do. So I'm quite interested in the topic of networking and building community, as it helps me both personally and professionally.
Excellent. Well, and I can tell you are a connector. You and I met at that first EO.
It was Traction Capital. Yeah.
Traction Capital event.
Yeah.
And right away, I was struck by you and your business development, Ben, and thought, okay, you guys are awesome at what you're doing. So maybe back up for a little bit and just say 15 people, you're in the Entrepreneurs Organization. How'd you get started kind of running your own show?
Yeah, I've got kind of an odd background, but I think from an early age, I wanted to be doing something on my own. I don't know if that's because I don't particularly enjoy being an employee, or I've got a kind of a healthy independent streak in me. But I remember way back in the day when, I don't know, personal computers first came out, I tried to sell mailing labels to people. And I was maybe 13 or something at the time. So I've had jobs and I've been working since I was 13 and started a few companies along the way. So how did I get started? It's a bit of a winding road to real estate investing, and my background is a little bit non-traditional. I went to college here in Minnesota. As part of that, I studied the Russian language. We had to pick a language to as part of the requirements for the college, and I didn't want to pick Spanish because that seemed like the easy route. And I grew up with, I guess it was President Ronald Reagan at the time, talking about the Soviet Union as the evil empire. So long story short, I studied Russian. Then I worked in the Twin Cities for 6-7 years for a consulting company, and then I started my own consulting company. And then I decided to go back to business school. And as part of getting into a good business school, I decided I would be a more interesting candidate if I somehow integrated my Russian language experiences. So I applied for a dual degree program at the University of Pennsylvania, which is the Wharton Business School. And then there's a second master's degree that I got from the Lauder Institute, which is part of the University of Pennsylvania, studying Russian again. So that led me to, in 2003, when I was graduating, this was after 9/11. So there weren't as many jobs for a typical Wharton graduate in New York as there would have been a few years prior. So I decided to take a 3-month financial modeling project in Moscow, Russia. It just so happened.
Okay, so now wait a second for the listeners, because I'm curious how many people are on Duolingo. Like you said, Spanish would be easy. Can you say something for us right now in Russian, like, I need a job, or I'm just impressed that you took Russian in college and then, practiced and said, okay, I want to do it. So we need just one sentence, and then somebody that is listening that speaks Russian can type in the comments.
All right. Меня зовут Ян Колвилл. Я очень рад принимать участие в вашем подкасте. Сейчас я буду рассказывать про свой опыт в России.
Okay. And that was excellent. I heard something about a podcast. So you're telling all our Russian listeners to, spread the word so that
I said I'm very happy to be participating in the podcast. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experiences in Russian, which will get into a networking theme, believe it or not.
Okay, no, I'm with you. So now all of a sudden you've got this dual degree and you're working for 3 months in Russia. And what are you working on there?
Okay, so it was a financial modeling project for a Wharton alum who wanted to build some warehouses near the airport. The exact nature of it isn't really the punchline. The punchline is somehow I ended up getting a job after that at a small investment bank in Moscow, which was eventually purchased by Deutsche Bank, which is an enormous public German bank. And I ended up being in Russia for 10 years. So I built a career in equity sales, investment banking. I ended up working for Deutsche Bank and Citibank. And my job was a networking job, essentially. My job and the people that were working for me at those banks, it was our jobs to represent Russian stocks, Russian investments to the Western world. There's plenty of intelligent and competent native Russian speakers who would speak to our Russian investors. So my group's job was to call up mutual fund managers or hedge fund managers in London, Frankfurt, New York, wherever, and tell them about what the opportunities were in Russia. And I arrived at a fortuitous time. It was 2003, and that's the oil price went up, pretty much straight up for the next 5 years. So there was a lot of interesting things to do. Russia has since become a little much more challenging, and most of the people I met at that time are no longer in Russia. For a variety of really unfortunate reasons. But as a result of that banking experience and the need to network as part of the job, I developed a pretty robust network of international business-minded individuals. And so when I decided to leave Russia let me connect this to real estate and then to a little bit more networking. Russia has gone through a couple of big crises, and some of the most successful business people that I met while I was over there were people who were willing to invest during a crisis, so take advantage of whatever very difficult situation had presented itself. So in 2008, 2009, when the real estate market was collapsing here in the United States, I thought of that as a very interesting opportunity to do some good and also perhaps build some sort of a future for myself. So I bought every now and then when I was going back to the United States to visit clients, I bought a house. And I know that sounds grandiose from today's perspective and today's prices, but back then buying a house in kind of a working class neighborhood was just not that expensive. So I started buying rental houses, and I had a portfolio of like 6 of them by the time I decided to leave Russia. So I put together a PowerPoint. I called my 6 houses and a 12-unit apartment building my track record, which is pretty modest by today's standards.
No way. No. That is impressive. And I got to just punctuate that you bought the houses. So here I am like buying a Boston Red Sox hat coming back from a trip to Boston and you're busy buying a house. So obviously, were you a finance major? Did I miss?
Yeah, I was. I mean, the business school was finance. Okay. So I've had some entrepreneurial instincts and some interest in finance. So I was an economics major in college and a finance major in business school. And then I was working in investment banking, talking about Russian investments. So I was surrounded by numbers and investments all day long.
And so you may not know this, Ian, because I don't know if it's even listed on my LinkedIn bio, but I was an investment banker for all of 9 months out of Chicago. So that was my first job out of college. And I like to tell poor William Blair that I was probably the worst employee they ever had.
It actually is on your LinkedIn profile here back in 1989.
Yeah, because I was a good enough salesperson that I could get the job. But then when I actually had to do all the spreadsheets and the analysis, the fact that I hadn't taken economics in college, that all came through I just couldn't grasp all the concepts. But anyway, let's go back to your PowerPoint then. So you've got these 6 houses and the 12
6 houses. I called it a track record. And as a result of having worked in Russia and banking during a period when there was, Russia was growing instead of shrinking, I knew people who were interested in investing and had some money. So I ended up raising $5 million from the network that I had built during the banking period. And I headed back to the United States with my $5 million. And I said to people, here's what I've done with the 6 houses and a small apartment building. Give me money and I'll go do more.
Great.
So it was, the timing was good. I mean, houses were cheap. I took advantage of whatever the situation was at the time and combined it with my own kind of experiences and network. So a lot of what luck is, I guess, preparation meeting opportunity. So raised $5 million, came back to the United States. With $5 million, you can then go to banks and borrow money on top of that. You know, sort of like when you buy your own personal home, you put down 20% and the other 80% comes from the bank. We bought about $20 million worth of houses. So $5 million from our investors and $15 million from banks. Bought $20 million worth of houses. And it's probably like 200 houses. Learned a lot along the way. So that was our first fund. And then a couple of years later, houses were still inexpensive. I raised another $5 million and bought another $20 million worth of houses. And then houses were getting more expensive, but there was a shortage of houses. So we started lending money to home builders. It's another thing that we do now. And then our home builders were telling us, well, we want to build houses, but there's not enough land for us to build the houses on. And by that, they meant developed land. So a developed plot of land has a road in front of it. It has the sewer and water and electrical lines already run to it. That's very different from a piece of farmland. It takes a lot of preparation work to get land ready to have a house built on it. So we also now invest in development projects, which is taking the farmland into that buildable state. And then sometimes we're investing in the home building process as well. So all of that requires continued networking and continued access to interested investors who have money to invest and trust us and are willing to do so. So when we have new projects, we either have to raise a fund, which will do multiple projects, or we have to raise money for one project. So it's grown to about $150 million of real estate assets that we manage in various entities, and about 100 investors as of today. And I've gotten the team to a place where their ability to find interesting projects and manage them has exceeded my ability to raise money. So I'm back in kind of a networking and an expansion mode. We're going to launch a new fund sometime in the next month. And I'll have to see what I can do to expand that network of people together with my colleague, Ben, who you met at that networking event.
Nice. That's excellent. And I'm just thinking about if we go back, and I always say to people, past performance is the best predictor of future performance. So I know you will be successful in this next raise.
Fingers crossed.
Well, as I always say, the best people are both humble and hardworking. So when you first went for your first $5 million to your network, how did you organize yourself? So you were in Russia and starting to think about your network,
because I had a family, so by then I had a wife and a child, and moving to the United States was a bit of an effort.
Yeah.
So I had maybe 6 months, 3-4 months. I don't remember exactly where, I needed to put together a PowerPoint and organize myself. I think one thing that successful entrepreneurs do well is they learn to fake it until they get there, or they make it up along the way, or they learn in the process. I do have the ability to sit down and just read voraciously. I can be hyper focused on something, or I can be scattered, disorganized. But if I'm interested in something, I will focus on it. Right. So I just read as much as I could. I looked at other PowerPoint presentations. I started building. I probably got some graphic design help from one of the contracting websites online to make it look a little bit better. I did own property, so I had something to say. I knew the financials well. those properties. But boy, is there a lot of making it up as you go.
Yeah.
Just go figure it out.
Yeah. I love, okay, so you said you read voraciously. Like what is one of the books that you think has sort of shifted and changed you through your career?
It's difficult for me to remember what I was looking at back then, but I have something more recent that I've read.
I'm not, you don't have to tell me your college textbooks, just something I know if you're a reader, you got a big brain and.
Well, back then and now, and whatever problem I needed to solve, I would just read as much as I could. And a lot of that, thank you, Google, for taking me to different esoteric websites out there. More really like, how do I put together a model for a fund, or how do I do the profit splits, or how do I what sort of legal structure do I need, and am I allowed to pay other people to raise money, and a lot of things that you could probably pay somebody expensive to answer for you. You don't have the resources to do that when you're starting a business. So, I learned and I made mistakes along the way. And each time we've raised money, I've improved something. But a lot of it is just read just enough so that you can get started. And then that kind of forces you to learn. More recently, I think one of the most valuable books I've read is The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan, and I forget the name of the second author there. Dan Sullivan runs an executive coaching program, strategic coach. It's a very simple concept, but simple concepts are worth listening to over and over again so that your brain really absorbs them. So I didn't mind reading a whole book about a single thing, which I can explain in 30 seconds. Dan's concept is, well, if we want to get somewhere, let's say we want to, we want to raise $10 million or something. It could be even something more simple, like I want to be able to do 10 push-ups. And I train and I train and I train. Let's do push-ups. And I get myself to the point where, today I can do 3, and a week later I'm able to do 5, and the week later I'm able to do 7. You have when you're at 3, 5, and 7, you have the choice. Am I going to focus on the progress I've made from 0 to 3, or from 3 to 5, or from 5 to 7, or that's the gain, the progress that I've made, or am I going to choose to focus on the gap between where I'm at now and the 10 that I want to be at? So if you focus on the fact that you're at 7, but you're not at 10, you're only at 7. That feels like a deficit kind of a mindset, and it's very depressing. I failed, or I'm not at my goal yet, or why can't I just buckle down and really get this thing done? And you completely miss the progress you've made. And if you can remind yourself daily to think about the progress that you've made, even though may not be out there at your ideal state, it can have a powerful impact on how you feel about yourself, and as a result, give you more energy to accomplish the next thing on your list. The ideal state, Dan refers to it as a bit of a horizon. The horizon is out there to give us something to shoot for, but you can't actually ever reach the horizon because the horizon keeps moving out. So the idea, we don't necessarily reach our ideals, but by having an ideal, moving towards it, and really appreciating the progress we've made, that makes life much easier. It gives us the ability to be happy along the way. And you can be successful focusing on the gap or on the gain, but boy, you're going to have a lot more energy and feel better about yourself. And as a result, enable people around you to feel better about you and themselves. If you focus on the progress you're making instead of, the difference between here and the next stop.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. I am going to recommend that maybe your next LinkedIn post is a little book summary of The Gap and the Gain, or for anybody listening, we're going to tag that book because Dan Sullivan really does write great things. But I love that synopsis because you actually really made me shift some of my thinking. Sometimes when you network, you think, who do I need to meet? You're always like, I need that next person that's going to be the greatest. And part of it, at least what I hear you saying too, and maybe this applies to networking, is like, I cherish my immediate network that I have,
Yep.
And yes, I'm still looking for that, 7, 8, 9 person that's going to fill out my goals, or that I can, I always want a great lawyer in my network, or I want to know whoever, somebody that's going to hire me to speak, right? But I like that thinking about.
If you could be looking for that next great person with a sense of gratitude, appreciation, and, gratitude and appreciation for what you've already achieved, it makes it more likely that you're going to be able to attract, the next thing that you need, but also that you're just going to be happier in that.
Yeah. And Ian, I am going to punctuate that one because I wrote down, I take notes as we're talking a little bit, and maybe people hear me flip my pages, but you said something about interested investors and people you reach out to that could trust you.
Actually, one more thing on the Dan Sullivan book.
Yeah.
I would recommend to your listeners that they listen to the audiobook, because the audiobook at the end of each chapter actually has extra interviews with Dan Sullivan and his co-author, which I think are as good, maybe better than the written chapters themselves. So do the audiobook for them. Sorry to move back to trust.
No. I like I said, I see your, I looked at your LinkedIn and I'm like, maybe that's your next post is once a month, the voracious reader posts a little, thought leadership. But let's talk a little bit about so you reached out to all these people when you were raising your first fund. How do you either know you have trust, or how do you build trust with people?
I don't think you know you have trust, but in my banking career, I tried to be fairly conservative in the things that I would represent to people. We think this is going to happen with this stock or investment opportunity, but here are the risks. I think I conducted myself in a way that was reasonable enough that people got a sense that I was less likely to be BSing them or just saying stuff to get their money. At least that was what my goal was.
Right.
And so I like to think that I'm able to do that. Now, getting people to give you money for the first time. Well, it helps that I had worked with a number of these people. So you always start with people first. I also had put some of my own money at risk already, so I owned properties. The next thing is a pretty powerful opportunity. If I was today trying to market a company that was going to bring a new cola product to market to compete with Coca-Cola and Pepsi, most people would look at that and say, well, that's not really an opportunity. So I picked an investment class that had just gone through an epic crisis. I mean, homes were obviously cheap due to a whole series of unfortunate circumstances. But I picked something that the story was easy to tell. So the story almost told itself. With a certain amount of competency from me, I was selling something that was easy to sell. Houses are cheap. We need to buying houses will help bring stability to a market that needs it, stabilize neighborhoods, give people a place to live, and there's also an opportunity for us to do well. So talking to people I knew already that had some professional experience with me, I had a modest track record where I risked my own money. The investment opportunity was pretty compelling. I wasn't trying to do something. I was trying to do something that made sense in the environment and was top of mind for people. So a lot of people were feeling the impact of the crisis on the negative side. So being able to talk about, let's do something positive and do well at the same time also worked.
See, I love all that. I'm just going to tell people, just push pause for a second and rewind. And what you just said, really is kind of the goal of what's made you a successful networker, connector, is be conservative, be positive, do well. I mean, again, when you re-listen to this, you just told people kind of what you do to be people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And
Another thing I do is I'm willing to tell people, and I have, don't invest with us, or the amount of money you're thinking about investing, given what you've voluntarily shared with me about your financial situation, doesn't make sense for you. I want to feel good when I go to bed each night about what I'm doing with investors' money. So that involves making good investment decisions, but there's also involves, and maybe we're growing more slowly than we could have or something. That works. I think as a result, people tend to come back. And then every quarter for the last 10 years, we do very consistent communication. I publish summaries of the investments, my opinions on the markets, my opinions on the outlook, and our investors can reach out and talk to me anytime. And periodically, I get on a plane and go see them. So
nice.
Staying in touch and being moderate about what I'm representing, being willing to represent investors' best interests always being willing to do what's in investors' best interests, even when they're not in my immediate short-term best interests. They are in the long term, we're aligned, but in the short term, being willing to say no to money, something like that.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, like I said, I think there's a lot of gold in this conversation, and we're nearing the end of things. So maybe we can have you come back at some point and tell how the latest raise went, after you've gotten done with everything. Any more nuggets you'd share with the listeners before we wrap up, or anything kind of percolating around in your mind?
First of all, thank you. Happy to come back. I think one of the things I said earlier in the conversation resonates with me, and it's been one of the things that I tell a lot of people who ask me, how did you do it, or how can I do it? First of all, we haven't done it. We're far away from what my ideal state is, but I'm happy about where we are. Just go try it. Being willing to put yourself out there and fail or learn along the way or not get it quite right will put you miles ahead of the folks who are not willing to take those small risks every day. Runners sometimes say the hardest part of a run is putting your shoes on, because once you got your shoes on, you're gonna head out the door. So do it and get used to the idea that nothing you do is going to be perfect, and that's okay.
And excellent. Are you a runner? Is that the?
I've run 5 or 6 marathons. In my later years, I don't do nearly as much running as I used to. So I'm still physically active, go to the gym, etc. But I'm not.
Nice. Well, you're welcome to join me. I'm a tennis player who plays an occasional pickleball. So if you ever need to, I've got a group coming up, and we're all people that, as I say, athletes and entrepreneurs sometimes have some similar mindsets, because you fail a lot, but you take a lot of risks and just keep going. Thank you so much for being here. Where do people find you, or what's the best way if somebody wants to reach out? Is it LinkedIn or through your website?
LinkedIn is fine. Our website is carpathiancapital.com. Can you write that in the show notes so people can find us? LinkedIn or our website where there's a contact us button. I'm happy to hear from anybody who has questions or comments.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. And I love the Russian. We'll get the translation going, and super great to connect with you.
I hope my accent was not so bad that you'll be able to understand it.
You were great. Thank you so
Kathy.
much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the All-Star Networking Show with Kathy Paper. If you're interested in being a guest, please contact Kathy at www.rockpaperstar.com.